please hit that subscribe button. Hey everybody, better suited to win the Stanley Cup this season. If you are new to the channel, Washington Capitals, the Boston Bruins.
Locked on and he scored! And we're live. Hey everyone. So it's time for NHL Games of the Week, where I choose what I think will be the best and most entertaining games to watch from the upcoming week in the NHL. Before we get into the video, I just quickly want to remind everyone to please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Both of those things really help out and are greatly appreciated. So, number of great games this week. A lot of really good action. We're into February now. We're getting down to crunch time of the NHL season. We've got a lot of great playoff races going on. We know who the top teams are. We know who the bubble teams are. We know who the bad teams are at this point in the season. But there are a lot of really good matchups this week. Definitely a lot more than we had last week. So let's get into it. Starting with today, February 2nd, Pittsburgh versus Washington at 12:30. NBC Game of the Week. Just top two teams in the Metropolitan Division, two of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. One of the best rivalries the NHL has had over the past 15 years or so. Absolutely outstanding matchup there. So Pittsburgh and Washington, definitely going to be must-watch hockey. Moving on to tomorrow, the 3rd, we've got Florida versus Toronto. This is a massive game in the Atlantic Division between the teams Florida and Toronto that are fighting for that last playoff spot in the Atlantic. It's just these two they're gonna, points wise, they're gonna be down to the wire. I think for the rest of the season, this is gonna come down till probably the last week or so of the year, and they get to play each other here, so that's gonna be a huge game with massive playoff implications. Tuesday the 4th, we have Florida versus Columbus, another game with massive playoff implications as Florida trying to be a playoff team. Columbus currently in a playoff spot. When you look at the wild card spots in the Eastern Conference, and then you throw in the number 3 division spots as well in both the Metro and the Atlantic, and then you throw in the first couple of teams outside of the playoffs. Everybody in the East now is right on top of each other as far as that playoff bubble goes. So these matchups are going to be absolutely huge between these teams, and there's big time points on the line when these bubble teams play each other. Chicago versus Minnesota, Central Division matchup. These are two teams trying to keep their playoff hopes alive. This is both outside the playoff picture right now. Going to be hard for either one of them to make the postseason this year, but if they're going to make a run, they need to win games like this. So this is a divisional matchup by outside bubble teams that really need the 2 points. So that should actually be a really good, hard-fought game, even though neither one of them is a playoff team right now. Nashville versus St. Louis. We've got Nashville trying to claw their way back into a playoff spot. They're a few points out right now. St. Louis, obviously the best team in the Western Conference and Central Division. Also a massive rivalry between these two teams as well. Blues and Predators is always a fun one when they play, so that should be a really good game. And then in the Pacific Division, we have Edmonton versus Arizona. A huge Pacific Division game there. Still in the Pacific, the teams are really stacked on top of each other. It's not as close as it was. Vancouver's been playing very well recently and have kind of moved themselves up ahead of everyone else, but still it's extremely close in the Pacific. And Arizona is starting to fade a little bit. They need Darcy Kemper back badly. Arizona's starting to lose it, so this is a huge game at home against a division rival that's higher than them in the standings, that they really could use a win in this game. So huge game there. The 5th, there's only 2 games on the 5th, Wednesday night, and neither one of them I think are game of the week material. So we move on to the 6th, Thursday night, Tampa Bay versus Pittsburgh. Two of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, the number 2 team in the Metro versus the number 2 team in the Atlantic. This is just going to be a great hockey game, and it should be a lot of fun to watch. Winnipeg versus St. Louis. Winnipeg's another team in a similar situation to Nashville and Chicago and somewhat Minnesota trying to claw their way into a playoff spot. Again, playing a division rival, the top team in the division, the top team in the conference in St. Louis. Very big, that's a big rivalry game in general. Between the Jets and the Blues, that's always a great matchup, but there's big-time points on the line as well, particularly for Winnipeg, so that should be a really, really good game. And then Nashville versus Calgary. Again, we're seeing the same teams come up because these are teams that really, really need points in very tight playoff races, teams that are going to be playing playoff-like hockey the rest of the way because every game matters for these bubble teams. So Nashville going into Calgary, they really, again, need the points. So that should be a fun, heated matchup where with a big 2 points on the line. In Calgary, they need points as well in that very, very tight Pacific Division. Friday the 7th, we've got Minnesota versus Dallas. Again, a Central Division matchup. Anytime those two teams from the Central play each other, it's usually a really good matchup. And Minnesota, like I said, desperately needs points, trying to somehow stay in this playoff race. Dallas, number 3 team in the Central right now, look like a playoff team, look pretty safe as a playoff team. But there's still 2 months left, so nothing is guaranteed. This will be a big divisional game for them as well. And then finally on Saturday, February 8th, we've got 6 games, I think, that qualify as Game of the Week material. I couldn't even really fit them all on the board properly. Got Nashville versus Edmonton. I mean, everything I've said about Nashville continues here. Huge points on the line. Edmonton in the Pacific, big points on the line there as well. The New York Islanders versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Islanders, man, starting to get worried. They have not been good recently. They are dropping in the standings. They are getting caught by teams below them. This is a huge game for the Islanders against a better opponent who's higher than them in the Eastern Conference standings. That they really need to come out of that game with some points and play well in that game. Going to be a tough one, but that should be a spectacular matchup. And the Islanders have got to start getting back to their winning ways here. Pittsburgh versus Florida. Obviously, Pittsburgh's one of the best teams in the East. Florida is one of those teams that desperately needs points right on the bubble. That's going to be a huge home game for the Florida Panthers to see if they can beat a opponent like the Pittsburgh Penguins and pick up that win. Philadelphia versus Washington. Philadelphia, a team that we haven't talked at all about in this video until now, but Philly's another one of those Eastern Conference bubble teams. They're playing a huge division rival in the Capitals, top team in the division, best team in the league this year. This is going to be a huge game for the Flyers and a huge rivalry game as well, so that should be a lot of fun. Dallas versus St. Louis, 2 of the top 3 teams in the Central Division, rivalry matchup, divisional matchup. Should be absolutely outstanding. That will be a great game between 2 very good teams. And finally, Calgary versus Vancouver in a massive Pacific Division game. We've talked so much on this channel about how close the Pacific Division is this year. Vancouver has taken themselves to the top and have separated a little bit. Calgary, Edmonton, Vegas, Arizona, still all very, very close, very, very tight to each other. This is a massive game, and if Calgary wins this game, then maybe Calgary could easily start to be catching Vancouver, and maybe we have a little bit of a change at the top of the Pacific. So anyway, just huge game there between division opponents and Canadian rivals as well, between the Canucks and Flames. Obviously, this season, rivalry-wise, it's been all about the Flames and Oilers, but Flames and Canucks has been a pretty darn good rivalry in the past as well, so that should be a great game. So those are my games of the week this week. There are quite a few. This is a very, very good week for NHL matchups. Hope you guys get the chance to watch some of them. I know I will be watching as many of these as I can. And with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.